Morning, good afternoon, good night, whenever you are watching this, guys. Welcome to Mentor Mornings, part 4 of 5 of the art of argument. I'm so excited to bring this to you because these tools that I'm going to be sharing today are how we create persuasion and influence, how we get what we want. Argument is around us all the time. Every day we are required to influence and persuade. And this is our opportunity to develop those skills and take them into the real world arena of life. So, so recently, my family, we were getting ready to go out on a boating trip. And my son came downstairs and he was dressed for success. Like, he was wearing his cowboy boots, he was wearing his Wrangler jeans, he had his undershirt tucked in, he was wearing a nice button-up long sleeve shirt. The only thing was missing was his cowboy, which meant an unfortunate end underneath my buttocks recently. So he wasn't able to wear that. But we were going to the lake and it was going to be really hot out. And I knew that he was going to want to be able to get inside the water. And so when he came down and I saw that, I said, all right, this is a chance for me to break out the 3 tools of persuasion that Aristotle speaks about. And so I'll finish this story. But first, what are those 3 tools of persuasion? Well, the first one, my friends, is the argument of logic. The argument of logic. The second one is argument of character. I hope I didn't spell that right. Yeah, I didn't spell it, but that's okay. And the last one, my friends, is the argument of emotion. So these are Aristotle's 3 tools of persuasion: logic, character, and emotion. And so when my son came down and he was wearing that full getup and we're going to the lake and it was going to be hot, I broke out the first one, the argument of character. And I said, Camden, you need to go put on your shorts because Dad says so. And he looked at me and he said, why? So I was like, argument of character, that one's out. Let's jump to number 2, argument of logic. And I said, well, it's going to be hot today. We're going to be on the boat and you're going to want to go swimming. And he says, well, Dad, I'll just bring my shorts. Argument of logic. Scratch that one off the list. The last and final one to employ would be the argument of emotion. And so I looked at him and I said, Camden, you know, when we get to the lake, I imagine that you may want to run right down into the water and just jump right in. You're not going to be able to do that inside of your pants and stuff. And I could tell that he was playing that movie inside of his mind. Remember how yesterday we were talking about using the power of choice and putting it in the future? Well, so I was tying choice with emotion. And so he was feeling that emotion. I could tell he was running the movie. He didn't say a word. He just ran upstairs and he threw on his shorts. So, bam! The 3 tools of persuasion, they are, my friends. And so, Aristotle had special, Greek words for each one of these, and they are much richer and have a lot more meaning than what we have right here. So what we're going to say is, we're going to write these down. So the argument of logic that Aristotle had, he called this one logos. Logos. The argument of character, he called ethos. And the argument of emotion, he called pathos. And so when we study, the tools that we can use to memorize this stuff, because, we're not, let's just think about it, guys. When you're in a conversation, it's really difficult to remember these things. The way that our minds work and our ability to remember is we have spatial memory. And so we can tie that spatial memory to got a notification. We can tie that spatial memory to our body to help us remember. So when we think about logos, using the argument of logic, that's our mind. So tie logos to your mind. Ethos is the argument of character. It's who we are. It's how we represent ourselves. It's our reputation. That's our heart. So ethos, put it right here in your heart. Pathos is the argument of emotion. And where do we feel emotion? It's in our stomachs. So we're going to tie pathos, the argument of emotion, to our stomachs, and that will help us remember. All right, so what we're going to cover today, my friends, by the way, if you appreciate this video, please hit that thumbs up button, share if you feel it is worthwhile, and subscribe, my friends, if you have not already. And if you do subscribe, please be sure to hit the little notification bell next to the subscribe button so that when I post these Mentor Morning videos, you can get that information right away. I want to be there inside of your pocket each and every morning, my friends. All right, so we have logos, ethos, pathos. What we're going to cover today is logos and pathos. Ethos, the argument of character, of who we are, how we represent ourselves. That is an extremely powerful and deep subject. We're going to save that for tomorrow's episode. So let's cover logic, the argument of logos. So it's not just about using the rules of logic that we have inside of ourselves. It's about meeting the audience where they are and what they're already thinking. One of the most powerful tools of logos is the art of concession. So when we are trying to persuade and influence, what we really want to do is create agreeability inside of the other person. So when we talked about inside the previous episodes, when we talked about, meeting the audiences, like what was our personal goal with the audience? Did we want to influence mind? Did we want to influence mood or their willingness to act? That's all creating agreeability, focusing on creating agreeability inside of the other person. And so concession is a tangible tool that you can use to create that agreeability. When you think about it, when you get into an argument with another person and somebody has a point of influence, if you are like a brick wall and they send that idea towards you and you are a brick wall and you say, no, not right, that creates another brick wall on the other side. Because what you're doing is you're telling, nobody likes to be told that they are wrong. Nobody likes to be told that. And if you are a brick wall and you do not concede or create agreeability, if you are not agreeable with yourself, the other person is not. And so what we want to do is, rather than being that brick wall, we want to turn. We want to deflect it so that it bounces off. And the way that we do that is through the art of concession. So I did a little skit here of what we could use, an example of concession. So let's say that somebody comes to you and says, I should be able to smoke inside of this restaurant. Well, if you said, no way, not going to happen, that's you bringing the brick wall. And that's going to create, an obstinate nature, confrontational nature in the other person. So what you could do instead is you could like say, yeah, sure, I'm sure everyone would love that. And the other person, at that point say, well, I know some people won't, but that's their problem. And then you could say, well, yeah, they probably wouldn't mind leaving their dinner, while you smoke. And so what you're doing there is you're being agreeable, you're conceding to the other person's idea, and you are leading them around to your argument. Aristotle loved the art of concession because what you're doing is you're being a guide. That's really what you're doing. You're being a guide and you are leading the other person to your thought pattern or what you're thinking. And so when we use the art of concession, we are not being confrontational. We're not leading them to our thought pattern by force. And so that is extremely powerful. All right, so let's jump into emotion or pathos. Now, when we employ pathos, what we're doing is we are basically showing sympathy. A while ago we talked about rapport and building rapport with your audience. And so when you build rapport, what you're doing is you're reflecting back the emotion that your audience is feeling. If you want to create rapport, if you want to persuade, if you want to create influence with another person, you have to reflect back to them. They want to see themselves inside of you. And by discounting another's emotion, we are breaking rapport. We're going to break that. So if you have two people and they're standing here and they're talking, if one person is smiling, the other person should smile. If one person he's got a sad face on, they should smile, or have the sad face on. And what we're doing is we're creating rapport between the two of them. And if you break that, suddenly they're not going to be as receptive. And remember, the whole point of all this is to create agreeability inside of the other party so we can influence, persuade, and so creating emotion. So as an example, the other night, my daughter came into the room, and it was bedtime. She was supposed to be in bed, and so I said, well, it's time to go back to bed, honey. And so she was going back into her room, and all of a sudden I heard this loud pop, and she came back in crying, and she'd hit her head on the doorknob. And I still don't know how that happened. So, my job at that point was to take care of the issue and persuade her, it's time to go back to bed, honey. So she came in and she was crying. And what I did was I looked at her and I kind of got the teary face and kind of used a pouty voice, and I said, "Oh, honey, that's too bad. Is the door okay?" And at the end of that, I started to shift the emotion. So she looked at me with her teary eyes, and she watched that I was feeling sympathy, and then I got the smile. She looked at me with her teary eyes, and then she just started giggling. And so what I did there is I showed sympathy for her emotion, the way that she was feeling, and then I guided her to the new emotion, the new desired state that I wanted her to be in. And so that is using pathos inside of argument. That's the art of pathos. And so ethos, like we talked about, it's the argument by character, reputation, who we are, and we're going to dig into that tomorrow. So what we have, guys, what we've covered so far is that when you're working with somebody, by the way, guys, if you appreciate this, please hit that thumbs up button and share if you feel it's worthwhile. What we are going to do here now, if we go through this entire scheme of what we've talked about in all four parts, is first set our personal goal. What do we want out of the argument? The second thing that we do is we determine where we want the audience to go. Do we want to influence mind, mood, or willingness? Mind, mood, or willingness of the audience. The third thing that we want to do, so we want to establish the core issue. And the core issues, remember, we covered them yesterday, are blame, value, or choice. Are we trying to find the perpetrator? Are we trying to influence their values? Or are we trying to help them create a new choice? The fourth one is the mechanics of how we speak. So we change the tense. So that's using time as a tool inside of our language, using past tense, present tense, or future tense. And if you remember, each one of those tenses, how we speak, will influence what the core issue is. And then the fifth one that we want to do is we want to persuade by creating agreeability inside of the other party. That's where we're going to be focusing on tomorrow with the power of ethos and the argument of character, which is extremely powerful, my friends. Thank you so much for watching Mentor Mornings. If you appreciate this, once again, please hit that thumbs up button. Hit the little bell next to the notification of the subscribe so you get these videos every day. And I will see you tomorrow, my friends. Until then, rise unconquered.